You made a New Year's resolution to find a new job, but now you're feeling a bit less confident. Or maybe you're a business that has budget cuts, meaning you have to restructure the staff you have. Whatever the reason, this video will highlight issues to be mindful of when applying or hiring for a new position, and how a recent court decision fits into all of this. So let's get started.
If you're new to my channel, my name is Karen Cole from Legal Minded Friends, and I assist litigants in person. So if you're someone who wants to represent themselves in a legal matter, then our videos will help you. One challenge as a candidate you could face is not knowing how to respond to questions. And after employers have interviewed several candidates, they may have different expectations from you, depending on how many people came before you in the interviewing process. Let's watch a short clip from the UK office, then we'll discuss what I mean.
Right, the interview. See what we've got here. Karen Roper. Curriculum vitae. Just looking at this, checking it out. Good. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I did GCSEs and A-levels and...
Too boring. Tell me about yourself.
If you know Ricky Gervais, you know he's a comedian. And he's also the creator of the UK and American TV sitcom The Office. Ricky, in my view, is a genius at bringing social awkward norms to the forefront in a humorous way. And in law, interviewing questions must not discriminate and must be the same for each candidate. As an employer, you will want to be able to evidence that your process is fair. So having an idea on what kind of responses you are looking for will be a good idea, so that you can give points on how each candidate has answered each question.
Using this procedure will ensure that the interviewer sticks to a script. By doing this, you will be able to give feedback to candidates who are not successful.
Now let's look at another clip, and then we'll discuss an area of concern that could be a problem down the line.
Amy, it says you are trained in technology. That's very good. Are you adept at Excel?
No.
PowerPoint?
No.
Publisher?
Not really.
Exactly in what area of technology are you proficient?
Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram, Vine, Twitter. You know, the big ones.
I'm surprised you didn't say Facebook.
That's for old people, like my parents. That's funny.
So in this clip, we can see that the candidate is being honest, trying to show that they have transferable skills, using their social media platform as an example. However, an employer may be concerned about your ability to focus on the job, especially if during the interview you are looking at your phone. Be sure to shut down your phone before going into the interview. On the other hand, an employer may be breaking the law if they make a judgment or form a bias against the candidate for their social media posts or profile, especially if their bias is discriminatory against one of the candidate's protected characteristics, which we will discuss when I tell you about the recent court decision. Before we get into the court decision I want to tell you about, employers can withdraw a job offer at any time if they find out you have lied or given a bad reference. And what you may not know is that they can charge you a reasonable fee to recover the cost loss for the time they invested in going through the process to hire you, and recover those costs in court if you dispute paying them. So the other thing to be mindful of is a CV in law is a legal document, as they can influence how decisions are made, and lies on CVs are actually illegal in the UK under the Fraud Act 2006. An example would be changing your previous job title to elevate yourself, or omitting certain facts that can be classified as fraud by false representation. which carries a maximum jail sentence of 10 years in prison. On the other hand, if your previous employer gives a misleading reference on you, you can take legal action against them in a county court for a loss you suffered. Or you may be able to make an employment tribunal claim if the misleading reference was for an internal interview. But contact us for legal advice, as there are strict time limits to taking action. As we were just talking about the possibilities of going to court, this leads us nicely into a recent court decision on a judicial review brought by the Chief Constable for the West Midlands Police regarding the decision of the Police Misconduct Panel, where they found an officer of the West Midlands Police to be guilty of gross misconduct during an internal interview. If you're not familiar with the term internal interview, this is where a candidate already works with an agency and they apply for a post within the same organizations. Now, some people may not realize, but the same due diligence must apply. And as I've been pointing out, the interviews are just as serious and formal. Let me tell you what actually took place. A senior police officer was being interviewed for a role in the police that had about the same pay, so what we call is a sideways move. During the interview, the officer was asked, "Give us an example of how you would consider a range of values and needs when making a decision that affects a group of people." Said simpler, most people would have had this question in an interview: how would you have dealt with a complex situation? Now, I think this is where most people misunderstand the interview questions. They want you to give an example in your decision-making process for you to consider how would values and needs, how would you apply values and needs when making a decision? And the twist to the end of this is saying on a group of people. We can assume, given this is an interview within the police department, one might think of a group of people to be a crowd. But given her current management position, let's see how she interpreted it. So in the interview, this officer took the meaning to mean a protected group, not a crowd. And instead of asking what kind of a group, or saying, "I've never had an experience like this, but if I did, I would consider X, Y, and Z." And she could have just told her thinking process. However, the officer replied saying there was an occasion where members of her team had made discriminatory comments to a transgender officer. So she carried out diversity training and documented these actions in each of the team's notebooks and set out 3 monthly reviews to monitor their outgoing behavior. Left leaflets on transgender issues around the workplace and had facilitated an apology to the person harmed by these slurs. The interviewing panel thought the transphobic incident should have been escalated for a disciplinary investigation and wondered why this was not. And for this reason, they told her she was not successful with the new post. Now, I'm sure many people can relate if you've ever been bullied by a colleague at work, or if a colleague is not pulling their weight and causing you stress, and you tell your manager, and if your manager does not take the appropriate steps to remedy the situation, then your confidence in your employer diminishes. So I think the panel was right to question why the incident wasn't escalated, to find out why the incident wasn't escalated for further investigation. They wanted to find out more. Remember, the internal candidate, who was the officer, was still working for the organization. She, at this point, was just not successful in getting the other post. So they asked her who were the persons involved in making the transgender slurs. And this is where the lie was caught out. The long and short of what happened was, when questioned further, the internal officer confessed that the whole story was made up. As a result, the appropriate authority, which is the claimant represented by the chief of police, wanted her dismissed without notice, which was the most serious remedy of the 5 choices that they had open to them. And if you're interested in what they were, the lowest remedy was management advice. The second was a written warning. The third was a final written warning. The fourth was dismissed with notice. And the fifth, which was the worst, was to be dismissed without notice. However, the panel for police misconduct considered this lie during a competency question in her interview was a breach of 3 separate standards. And at the time, because she was a supervisor, one can expect an even higher standard of behavior. Though there was no financial gain, there was an element of professional gain, and a gain potentially at the expense of her colleagues who were also competing for the same job. The mitigating factors were that it was a single episode for a brief duration, and she displayed genuine remorse. No one was harmed, and she had 27 years of an unblemished service record. So they decided a final written warning was the correct level. So how do you think the court decided? Well, the court agreed that the fabrication of the story was to elevate herself, and that the answer to the competency question could have been an example, which I pointed out at the beginning of this video. But instead she lied and interpreted the question of a group of people to be within a protected characteristic, which the court felt she did not actually discriminate against, meaning she had not named anyone, so the court agreed with the decision that the police conduct panel had made. And given her 27 years of having an unblemished record, the court felt that she was not a threat to the public, nor would she be dishonest in the future. The officer had not appealed against getting the new post, nor had she appealed against the police conduct panel's decision. It was her employer that appealed and took legal actions. So all grounds of the review failed to be proven against the police conduct panel and the officer by the appropriate authorities, namely the West Midlands Police. And their application for judicial review is dismissed, meaning the final written warning will remain in place. This is my analysis or view. Both the Police Misconduct Panel and the court is a separate authority to the West Midlands Police Constabulary. The lie told was the dictionary definition of a white lie. It did not hurt anyone's feelings. Now, had the officer got the new job based on that lie, then it would have hurt other colleagues' chances. And then I believe it would have been a completely different story. At court, if you plead guilty, which this officer did, she came out straight away and said that it was all a fabrication, then there is a reduction available to the courts up to 1/3 of the remedy available. The other point I'd like to make is that this fabricated story that the officer told was not the correct procedure. For the example, so the lie, in my view, did not elevate her, as I would agree that had a homophobic slur did occur, that given they were all police officers, they should have known better. So if it were a true story, then it would have needed a a formal investigation. If true, if the formal investigation found that it was true, then they could have managed it by training, which was as illustrated, that the officer gave. She told that that's what she, carried out in the fictitious story, which might have been the remedy if it were really true and the investigation discovered that it could have been dealt with that way. So I think this officer was saved by the bell, sort of speaking, by the panel asking for further questions, and because it was ultimately discovered, the lie was discovered very quickly, no one was hurt. So how can you tell if someone is lying? This is a good time to bring in the ex-CIA agent who does online awareness for all types of businesses on how to spot a lie. So let me introduce you by playing a segment of her video.
Forget about looking at truthful behavior, then that cuts your job half and half. Right? Now you're getting a drink of water out of a garden hose as opposed to out of a fire hose. All right? It makes things a lot easier. But truthful people, or deceptive people who give you truthful answers, make it look like they're good folks. They're cooperative folks. They're going to give you everything that you need to get. All right? And in reality, what they're doing is convincing you that they're being truthful because you saw one good answer, not several good answers. Okay?
So that little clip gave us a lot of valuable information. Liars will try to convince you by validating their lie with self-promoting what a good person they are. The officer in our example came clean when directly asked for the details. But if, for example, she would have said, when asked who made the transphobic slurs or the homophobic slurs, and she would have said, oh, well, I dealt with it. Why are you questioning me? Why are you questioning my authority or judgment? I have 27 years of an unblemished service record. How dare you? I want you to put your request in writing and the reasons why you are challenging me. Then that would have been promoting herself as a good person, but she did not. She had already lost the new job opportunity, and the final written warning is a serious blemish going forward on her career record. The moral of the story is, I'm sure most of us were taught as kids, if you tell me the truth, now I won't be so upset. And our legal system offers the same benefits to telling the truth early on. I've left links below in the description area. Well, I hope you found today's video interesting, and information is power. Why not subscribe and watch more of our videos? If you need legal help, contact legal-minded friends.